How do I reduce survey non-response? There are 3 types of survey non-response: refusal, item omission, and break-off. The techniques to reduce them depend on which particular type of non-response we're dealing with. First, refusal. You can reduce refusal by selecting a time and place that's convenient for the survey respondent. I once had some students who thought, I've got a lot of business people who would be happy to do a survey if I met them at the corner of King and Bay at 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, not very convenient for the respondents, and they said, no thanks, as they were entering the bank towers to begin their workday. Even though there were a lot of promising candidates there, wrong time and place in terms of convenience. They could have had better chance to catch them after work, or even catch them on the Go platform as they're making their way back on their workday. Next, proper deportment, grooming, politeness, and apparel. It's about showing respect and trying to behave as a professional would. Declare an incentive. Tell them what's in it for them. Are they helping the world? Are they going to have a chance to win something? Emphasize the importance of their input. They are very important people, and their insights are going to help fuel smarter decisions, smarter products, better customized services, a better world. Next, the confidentiality of their input. Their information will be kept private and blinded. Number 2, item omission. Item omission is when a respondent decides to skip a question or refuses to answer a particular query. To reduce item omission, ask any sensitive questions at the end of the survey. Questions of age, income, sexual orientation if you have to ask it, they should always be asked later in a survey. After you've built rapport, after they understand the context, and after they feel vested in the survey because they're most of the way through anyhow. Which brings us to context setting. If you're asking about treasury bills, GICs, and indexed funds, and how much should a responsible household save every month, then a question at the end of how much income they generate is a reasonable question. It's in context. Before you start those sensitive questions, it's also helpful to include a disclaimer, such as, the following questions are being asked for classification purposes only. It's a great way of saying, or reminding them, this information is not really going to be traceable back to you as an individual, but it is useful and aggregate for us to cluster the findings by segment. Also helpful for reducing item omission, give the consumer some room in their responses. Instead of asking for exact age, ask for an age bracket. Is your age between the ages of 25 and 34, 35 and 44? The broader the bracket, the less intimidated they feel about that question and the less likely they are to skip it. So choose a bracket that gives them a little wiggle room. And preferably, it's a bracket that synchronizes to the data of Statistics Canada or Vividata PMB or other sources. So when your boss asks you, can you tell me how many consumers there are in the city who look like that? You can say, yes. I've extrapolated that to the Statistics Canada database. 3, reducing survey break-off. Break-off is when you have a consumer, they're answering all the questions, but suddenly they break it off and have to stop. How do you avoid break-off? Well, for one thing, make sure that the time and place that you're meeting the consumer at is likely to be interruption-free. If you're doing a landline phone survey and you are crazy enough to call at 3:15 in the afternoon to a homemaker who's got 2 or 3 kids under the age of 12, well, I think you know what's going to happen. Your survey will be toast. Also, to reduce survey break-off, ensure that you give them an accurate time to complete estimate up front. Don't tell consumers it's 4 minutes long if it's 8. Guess what? They're smart and they travel everywhere with a phone with, of course, a clock on it. So when you're at minute 5 and minute 6 and minute 7, they're aware that you have just lied. They will break it off. Be honest. Give them an accurate time to complete estimate right up front when they start the survey. Also, an effective tool to reduce survey break-off is to provide a status bar or progress bar. Come on, you do surveys. You know that if I'm not telling you what percentage of the survey you've completed, you're not very happy. You don't know where you stand. Give them a goalpost. Tell them how they're doing. 50% complete, 60% complete, 70% complete is very motivational. Another effective tool to reduce survey breakoff is to optimize the survey's flow. It should have a sequence. It should have a story. It should go from broad elements to more minute and granular elements. It should flow in a logical fashion. Consumers respond better to a survey and will stay with it longer if it has a certain elegance and logic of flow. Once you get on a topic, try to stay with that topic for a reasonable amount of time and not jump around a lot. Once you start to use a particular type of question format or scale, try not to jump around a lot. Surveys that stay with one topic and one type of response tool tend to be better answered. Also be aware that questions that tend to confuse respondents will end up causing either breakoff or item omission. Questions where you have not done a good job of making sure all the responses that are reasonable for them to give are actually included. Any survey should make sure that the responses are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. In other words, their choice is there, and it's not confusing about which of two choices is the one they intended to give. For example, you should probably provide a prefer not to answer or a do not remember if you're surveying them based on some long past behavior. Maybe they don't remember, or perhaps if it's a question of rating some salesperson, they prefer not to answer because they don't want to get into trouble. At least, even though you didn't get the data, you have not broken off the survey and you have not antagonized the respondent. That's important stuff. So, 3 types of survey non-response: refusal, item omission, and breakoff. Each one can be managed, can be minimized, but it takes different types of tools and techniques to handle each one. If you made it to the end of this, then you obviously didn't refuse to watch it, didn't omit it, and didn't break off. So hey, subscribe!